Hey, this is BA. What you're about to see is excerpts from a private invite-only webinar. Okay, so keep in mind, this special YouTube version is not the complete webinar. However, it contains extremely important, vital information for those of you that are working on Gann's advanced system. Enjoy. Hey, welcome to the numbers price system. This is a webinar given April 25th, 2023 at noon Chicago time. And my dear friends, you are at go. W.D. Gann quote, you have to know how a pyramid stands to a circle. Okay. Early on, this quote, combined with certain elements from Tunnel, led me down an entirely different road of research when it came to this advanced price system compared to what everyone else had on the internet at that time. And I don't go around these days and looking, like what's on the internet anymore. But back in those days, there was like, you do this, you use the angle and all that other stuff. And it was this quote, along with Tunnel, it was that combination that led me down an entirely different road of research. Okay. If you view the bottom of the pyramid, which we will in a little bit, you can envision the squaring of a circle. Because if you, look down at the pyramid, you would see a square base. It's four sides. Well, that implies squaring the circle. We're not going to get too much into that yet. Okay, but that's extremely important, and both Bayer and Gann covered that. Okay, remember, to really be Gann's, it must come from the Tunnel book. Must. Okay? We're going to be dealing with, and starting off with, natural divisions of a circle and square. Later on, you'll see why this intro area, if you will, is so important. Okay? Squaring the circle, that's a very important concept indeed. Okay? Now we got to know how to divide these things. Okay, so now we're going to be dealing with the natural divisions. A circumference can be generated from a square. What? A circumference can be generated from a square. This is totally Gann geometry, which is old geometry before it was molested. We're not dealing with quantum physics. You don't need to know quantum physics. I don't know it. I have no idea. Don't need to know it. Not on the radar. It's that old ancient, or some people call sacred geometry. It shapes geometry. It leads to simple spherical geometry. So you should be aware of modern day molestations of the old or sacred geometry, my friends. Let's take a look at this closer. The side of the square is used as a diameter of the circle. When you have a diameter of a circle, you have the circumference. Side equals 12.414. Diameter equals side. 12.414 diameter. Okay. Times 3.14159 equals 39. Now, to get the radius, you take the side of the circle, which is the diameter, and you divide it by 2. It's a very simple equation, which I'm sure most of you know. Okay? A circle inscribed within a square, or is it a square inscribed around a circle? I had to try both at first. Okay? From that square, we can generate 8, which is oct in Greek or octo in Latin. Right triangles from a square. We can generate 8 right triangles from a square using the harmonics of 360, 180, 90, and 45. Simple harmonics, but they're harmonics. Not shown is that these natural divisions are exactly applicable to our circle, which sits inside the square. And remember, circles are always 360 degrees, no matter how big or small the circumference is. using the 90 harmonics. Okay, you see the divisions? Jensen talked a lot about this. Gann, you know, this is no, if this is new information to you, welcome to the Gann field, right? You know, this is old information, but it's presented for a specific reason here, okay? Using the 90 again. See, you go 360, 180, 90, 45 using harmonic divisions of a circle. The 45, which is the square within the square, or 45, 135, 225, and 315 points. What is important is how they are divided. What is really going on here with all these divisions? Okay. As you can see there, I've outlined here. Well, I've enhanced. I should have enhanced that maybe a little bit more, make it a little bit more noticeable. But you'll see this there. You see that there? All right, so what you've got here is on all of the squares, they have these divisions. It's universal. Every square, not just Gann squares that you see in front of you, every square has these natural divisions. You know, as you know, the square of 25, you know, the square root of 25 is 5. Okay? Well, that 25 has natural divisions, just like this does. Here's our old friend I'm sure you'll recognize. If you got in a helicopter and hovered over the top of a pyramid and looked down, you would see this view. The remaining lines are simply more divisions using the same factors, because we can see here, we can see the cardinal divisions going down. Now, I did not mark those because it would go through the numbers even more, but you can see how Gann has them. Cardinal divisions, okay? And these lesser divisions of the 45 we have in the black. And then Gann just simply divided again to go down to the next harmonic. That's it, very simple, okay? The remaining lines are simply more divisions using the same factors. Now, if you've read Gann's books, the master courses, you're aware of that in there, that he continues to take those down. It's simple divisions all the way down, okay? But you're using the same harmonics time and time again on everything. So as you can see, he used these divisions universally. So the pyramid has a square base. We touched briefly on that, and that way down the road, we'll go back and review that. There's 8 triangles. If you divide that, if you fly in your helicopter over the top of that pyramid and you look down, and you would divide that in 8 sections. Now, he's got more divisions on here, okay? But as you can see, these black lines combined with these cardinal points give you 8 sections, or 8 right-angled triangles. 8 right triangles. Again, we're going to see that play out down the road. And then there's also height. We're not going to touch on height yet. We're not going to touch on height. But it is important, and there's a special thing that goes along with that. We got to move on, okay? Critical concept. I've studied W.D. Gann for over 26 years. I have found critical concepts, which I'm going to bring out and amplify for you in this webinar. Now, this is simple. It's just a few words and some circles. Don't let the simplicity fool you. Markets are fractal. So all markets, and technically all of nature, operate in that outer circle. They're fractals. The next level down is spirals. What's spiraling? You'll see that in just a moment. You'll see that in just a few moments. What is spiraling? And then there's squares, which we've touched on, and then there's circles. Note that these circles are inside other circles within the context of fractals. And this is the key on how it really all works. I've never seen this information presented like this anywhere. Never have. I've never read it. Just had to figure it out over the years. Critical concept number 1. Now, we're going to get into several critical concepts here as we go on. These are going to be our foundational building blocks as we move on. Not just in this part, not just in this segment, but from here on out. So these are your base concepts, okay, that we're going to be taking as we roll forward here. Now, luckily, this is being recorded and it will be distributed to an official recording if you're attending and so on. But even through this, I'm going to slow it down just a little bit because these concepts are so critical to understand. Starting off, 2 concentric circles can be derived from a square ratio between the circles, 1.414. How is that 1.1414? How does that come about? Well, it emanates from a radius vector. Okay. The diagonal of the square here is here, as you can see, obviously. It emanates from a radius vector. A side of the square is here. It emanates from a radius vector, central point. Okay? So it proves out the ratio is 1.414. A simple concept, overlooked, and most people would think this has absolutely nothing to do with W.D. Gann. To my knowledge, there's no one out there teaching this. And this is the first time that I've put it in this format. Okay? Diagonal of a square is radius of a larger circle from the center. Let's move on. Critical concept number 2. We touched on it in critical concept number 1. Radius of a circle is a vector. Simple geometry, but most leave out that the radius is actually a vector. See, you've all heard of Gann angles. I mean, they're everywhere. Gann angles. What is that line that's going up? Okay, and we're going to explore that more. But what is that line really? It's a radius vector. Yeah, you draw the angle, from the low point to the high point. That line is a radius vector. We're going to get into that. Jensen, with the radius vectors, application to use are polar coordinates. Well, guess what? A golden spiral uses polar coordinates. Jensen, and this is the brilliance of that book. A good example of it. One is stationary and the other is rotating. Okay? Here, our red line, our rotating line, is a radius. Okay? Our stationary line, which is the purple line, is stationary. Not even, there's so much buried in this webinar. Before this is all out, you'll understand why we had to go with the colors that we did. Even the colors used in this webinar have a special, very special importance down the road, as you're going to learn. Okay. Keep in mind the red line is a radius. Okay. Critical concept number 3, a golden spiral differs from other logarithmic spirals only by a special growth factor. Okay? That's what separates it. You see, it's got a special growth factor. That's what makes it inherently unique. A golden spiral differs from other logarithmic spirals only by a special growth factor. Okay? And as you can see, your 5, your 8, your 13, 21, I'm sure you recognize those as Fibonacci numbers. Okay? And the spiral starts here, and it goes out. And it goes around, and it hits this corner here, and it hits this corner here, and it hits this corner here, and so on. Okay? It just spirals out. Guess what? These are quarter point turns. These are quarter point turns, 90 degrees. These squares are to each other. We'll get into that more. There's another critical concept. Critical concept number 4. Red plus blue equals purple. Critical concept number 4 is actually radius gives us diameter, and diameter gives us ellipse. Okay? But that's why we use the color scheme here. Red plus blue equals purple. It's that purple we're after. It is that purple we're after, which is why the background's purple, or some form of it, actually. Actually looks more purple on one of my monitors here than probably what you're seeing, but you'll get the point. I'll have to change that going on. Anyway, we will be seeing this a lot in the slides. It is central element to this presentation. The ellipse is generated by 2 circles, okay? Or in the reverse, if you think about it, 2 circles can be drawn from an ellipse. George Bayer, a contemporary of Gann's, wrote about ellipses directly. Gann wrote about ellipses, but indirectly. Indirectly. Gann wrote about them indirectly. Where? Tunnel? Yes, tunnel. He even mentions them in tunnel pages around page 70s something. I just recalled. He says everything in this universe is circular or elliptical. Okay. The emphasis is on that major axis there. Okay. Note the minor axis is the north-south diameter of the smaller circle. Once again, the minor axis that you're seeing, that's this axis here. The minor axis is the north-south diameter of the smaller circle. The large axis, or major axis, of course, is the diameter of that larger circle. Key concepts. Key concepts. We want to start looking at applications at this point. What we've got is a foundational background, to build from. What we want to do, is get into the applications. And the only way to do that is to start looking at a market. How does this work in a market? What elements are involved in this when it comes to markets, and how do we really sink our teeth into this? That's the key. That's where we're going. Okay, so pay close attention in this area, as there's more going on than meets the eye. To that effect, note at certain points, we will work with the lines that you've seen me drawing for years. Very important. We're going to use stock Tesla, TSLA. Tesla contains the interest as its price over the last few years or so has risen at a good clip. Obviously, these same principles can be applied to any stock, commodity, index, currency pair, and or commodity. Your choice. They're universal. Gann taught him using commodities primarily. In his book, Tunnel, he does mention the market at a few junctures. He primarily taught commodities in that book. Cotton, taught cotton. He taught along with some stocks, airplane stocks, you name it. Okay. General Motors. We're gonna start dates here. And we're going to be looking at the move there. Okay, now this is a top to top. A lot of people aren't going to view that as important. Everyone's trying to go from low to the high, you know, to catch the move or whatever. But if you knew, and there's a way to do it, if you knew basically where that high was going to come in at, you could have played that up move from that low between the two highs all the way up. Or a different play. I'm just giving you an example. There's different ways to play it. So it's a real, you know, even though on the surface it doesn't look like the big kahuna, it can be. It's shown for a reason. Let's get into that. Now also keep in mind that high to high, that differs from the lines that I've been drawing for years all over everything. Red plus blue equals purple. Red plus blue equals purple. Okay. Price, time, length of vector, or a hijacked Pythagorean theorem here. Price squared plus time squared equals vector squared. The old Pythagorean theorem. Here for our applications. Keep in mind as we go through this that in all cases, the radius is a vector, or the vector is a radius, however you want to view it or say it. This is key and a very central point here. So what I'm saying is that line from high to high, that's what you got right here. The length of the vector there is 62.13. Off the bat, we have a fundamental problem, which leads to a problem. Your problem is this. Is the 62.13 the major axis, or is it the radius of the smaller circle? Or could there be more than one option occurring within a market? Are there repeats at certain intervals of time? This needs to be explored, all this. It all needs to be explored. All right. You can see the radius there drawn in the red line. You can see the major axis or the diameter of the larger circle. But what is that up there? What is that? That's our square. That's our square up there, our 21. Same color, gold. Gold and purple are royal colors. All right. So we've got the major axis at 62.13 here because we're using that diameter there. Okay, we're using that diameter. Here we are using the major axis of the ellipse to generate the circles. In reality, reverse engineering the process in order to make a comparative framework in which to properly analyze the different moves. This is a crucial step in learning for relations between different moves. The goal, of course, is to find out how it all repeats. Say that again. The goal, of course, is to find out how it all repeats. Well, in order to find that out, you got to know what the tools are to get in there and start working with the elements. Okay? Gann angles? Are you kidding me? What? Okay, so let's get into this. Major axis is 62.13. The diameter of the larger circle is 62.13. That should be now obvious to everyone why that is, because the diameter of the larger circle is the major axis of the ellipse. Same thing. The radius of that circle is 31.06. The radius of the smaller circle is 21.96. Now we're going to take that radius, that same radius, the 62.13, and we're going to, I'm sorry, that same, we were using it as a diameter, but that same 62.13, we're going to use it as a radius here. As you can see, the red line, radius, marked radius, there you go. Here the emphasis is on the radius of the smaller circle, not the major axis of the ellipse. Note the radius of the smaller circle is 1/2 the length of the minor axis of the ellipse. Once again, note the radius of the smaller circle is 1/2 the length of the minor axis, not the larger, okay, minor axis of the ellipse. There is a geometrical reason for viewing it in this manner. We've still got our red and blue, but up here, it's not purple, it's a red. The radius is red. Radius is 62.13, the diameter, which is just simply radius multiplied by 2 is 124.26. The diameter of the larger circle then is 175.70, and the radius of the larger circle is 87.85. Self-explanatory, but note here we wind up with the radius of the larger circle. If we pause here and think on it, this circle is essentially invisible on a price chart. 99+% of people would never calculate it because they don't know to. They don't know how to. They have assumed when Gann said geometry, he was only referring to what? Gann angles. The angle of the radius in the polar coordinates. The angle of the radius in the polar coordinates. How untrue. That's only one thing going on there. See. Over 99% of people who have or are studying Gann have no idea that price moves and circles are synonymous. It's the same thing. Okay, they just don't know how to view it. We will need to bring in, which we're going to do, more factors here to see the full picture.